Hey guys, this is Ash. I've been getting a lot of questions in regards to how I mix my tracks, how I use reverb, EQ, if I use compression, how I master the tracks. The main question I've been getting a lot is how do I use reverb? And I just didn't want to make that one video and to explain, one mixing technique. I decided to do a full series on mixing, a series of lessons, if I may say, that explains the major aspects of mixing orchestral music. I know there's probably a lot of them online. There isn't really, a one way of doing things, and that's the beauty of it. And so I wanted to share how I do it and maybe give back some of the experience I've gotten after mixing, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of orchestral tracks. So I don't want to keep going on, but mainly what I'll be doing, starting with this one, is lessons on mixing. I'll be going through Reverb and how I use it. What applications can you use it for? In the future lessons, I'll be talking about EQing on instrument level and bus level, and how I use EQ on the master channel as well. I want to talk as well about compression, when to use them, if any, because there's a huge misconception about compression in orchestral music, and I want to tackle that as well. Limiters, when to use them, when not to. Do I use parallel compression like you hear in rock and metal music? I'll be talking as well about how and when to layer instruments together to beef up the sound. I'll be talking as well about when to use synth and bass synth, and how to augment your orchestral instruments using that. In regards to mixing, not a choice of an instrument to be leading in a part. Like, I'm not talking about just a pad by itself. I'm talking how to use it in mixing. So all of these I'll be talking about, and then I'll do another series on how I master my tracks. Sorry guys if I am yapping a lot. This is my first time really trying to explain what's in my head, but putting it out in words. So it is kind of strange. It's kind of a bit scattered right now. So I hope you guys will give me a bit of slack on that first one, but I promise I'll be better on the next ones. There was this track called The Rise. There's a template as well if you guys want it. It'll be in the description. There's a link to if you want to buy that. But I'll be going through how I used reverb on that track. Let's play the track quickly and talk about what I did. All right, let's go. So that was the track. It sounds pretty decent. I wanted to put out a template that didn't have tons and tons of layers. I wanted to do something epic as well with minimal layers. So as you can see, there isn't much at all, but it still sounds massive. And I want to show you how to get to that point. But we're going to take it step by step, so you you really do understand everything, not just copying settings that I'll be showing you. I really do want you to understand the concepts. Power of mixing, really. So I want to play a section of this track with and without all the plugins I've used to mix it. So let's take this beginning section here. All right, so let's go into the mixing plugins I have, and let's disable. I don't have much plugins out here as well. We're going to go through them, but let's disable what we've got here. All right, and let's take whatever I have on the master as well. We're just going to keep the limiter so we don't screw our ears if it gets louder, and I'm gonna keep the reverb sends. It won't be making much difference, but let's play that section now without. All right, insane difference. Let's put everything back on and go through everything. All right, let's hear it now with the plugins we have. All right, quite a drastic change. Now everything here is balanced. You can hear the strings where they should be, the brass where they're supposed to be. You don't hear all these synthy, bassy up in front. Now they're mixed behind the orchestra, and that's how I like it. I typically don't do a lot of these trailer tracks where like the synth are up in your face and a few orchestral layers in the background. I like to orchestrate and I like orchestral tracks, but I use a lot of synth to augment my music and make it beefier. And I'll show you guys how to do that. So you're not hearing up front. But I wanted to show you the power of a good mixed session and what it can do to enhance your track. So my tracks used to sound before maybe a few years ago, but now it's getting better, I feel. So today's topic, reverb. We've spent a lot of time talking about all these nonsense. It's not nonsense, but other stuff. But I wanted to give a bit of introduction to the power of mixing. Now that's out of the way, let's talk about today's topic, which is reverb and how I use it. So I'm going to take the strings section and show you what I've done and how I've made the choices of reverb to make it sound how it is. So let's just solo the strings and let's hear that section again. All right. Alright, so these strings now, they sound like they're in the same hall. The first application, the first instance of reverb that I use on when I'm writing a new track or mixing, is placing instruments, different libraries, different string libraries together in the same hall. All these different libraries have been recorded in different halls. So Alias Scoring Strings been recorded in a very dry studio, not a lot of room tail to their samples. So, but I like the sound of the samples. I like how they have that crunch to it. Like I don't know how to explain it, but I like it. The attack of the bow on the strings. I love that. So I love using that on my cello, especially like the ostinato kind of parts. And I like the shorts from the first Albin one. Let's see. Yeah, so I like that spiccato ostinatum patch from the and I it's an older library, but I love it, and it sounds right. But both together, if played without reverb or the EQs, listen to this, man. They sound like they're in totally different places. Let's listen. You hear that? So the cellos, the LA is very upfront, and they're very upfront. They're very dry, um, and the violins from the Spitfire ones, they're kind of in the back. But I want them both to be um, left and right stereo kind of. So obviously, a lot of people are going to tell me, well, just lower the volume. Yeah, exact. I will do that. But when I EQ, like the and that's another topic. But when I EQ those and I take off all the frequencies that we're not going to want in our mix, because we're going to still have the brass going. We're going to have the synth. We want to leave room for all these instruments as well, or their main frequencies to shine. So I'm going to put the EQs back on and just going to take the reverb off for now. Okay? They're getting there. But the violins, they're still they're still back in the hall. They sound like they're in the middle of the hall, and that's how I like to mix my tracks. I like it from a conductor point of view. I don't want it to be like really up in my face. I want to have a sense of the hall. It's orchestral music after all, so I like I like the hall sound in my music, but I don't want a washy wash. So what I do is, you guys obviously can copy my settings if you want, but this is not what I want you to do. Obviously, I want you to use your ears to get the sound right. So I'm gonna use let's listen to the violins on its own with the reverb. I like using Arts Acoustic. They just sound right to me. So first of all, I like the fact that it has the dry and the wet separate. I can EQ the frequencies that I like, the damping, like, you know, I can customize the reverb, and it sounds really good with that. So see, it isn't really washy, but I've EQ'd. We don't want these lower frequencies. Let me turn that off. So you don't want those lower reverb frequencies. They're gonna muddy your mix pretty quick. You usually want to cut that off if you have a reverb that has that option. And I always cut off the high end of it as well, because let's listen to the difference. Okay, here we go. So I'm gonna put that up and on the way it was with no high cut. You hear that tail? It's got that washy sound, like it's sizzly. I don't explain. It's very high, like harsh, and it's very washy kind of sound. You hear that tail? All right, let's bring it back where it was. Yeah, it just sounds a bit better. I don't like that kind of washy sound, and I like to obviously a low cut as well. So you're not getting that muddy tails, because you're still gonna have your brass going, your basses, you're gonna have all your bass drum, your percussion, all that is gonna take those lower frequencies. So we don't want that in a reverb. This is not an EQ, guys. This is just EQing the tail of the reverb. Has nothing to do with EQing the actual instruments. Just so we're clear about that. All right. So that's the violins. Now, when I played the cello with it, it sounded, like I said, up in the front. So I used reverb to push it back a bit into the hall. So it's not up front. Let's just solo that by itself. Sorry. without. See, so I pushed it back a little bit, and that's like the first application for reverb, how I use it. So first, I copied the settings the way it were because I want them both to have the same tail, and that's the first thing that the ear listens to. It's the tail of the reverb, and that's how you can tell if they're in the same hall or not. The tail of the reverb. And so I wanted the exact same settings, obviously the exact same tail and everything, but I pushed back the dry a bit, and let's call that dry knob like the distance from where the conductor is. So let's play it and do it together. All right. So now it's up front, right? Now we're gonna push it back a bit. See how it sounds like it's being pushed back in the mix. It's pushed back into the hall. Here we go. The easiest trick to push back a dry library sound back into the mix. So very simple. Copy the same settings that you would have, let's say, on your violin. That you like them, perfect. Let's copy them to the cellos. They sound the drier library, and just bring back the dry bit. And that's why when you guys were saying, why didn't you just lower the volume down? Because I was going to lower it in this part right here. So when I've lowered the dry signal, it was the exact same volume as the violin, but now they're both at the exact same distance, left and right, from where I stand the conductor. When I was listening to this, I felt like that there was a bit of I should have this green here. Maybe I should have fixed the velocity a little bit. It sounded like it was going up and down dynamics, but that's not a problem right now. So that was the first application for reverb. Hopefully you guys got that down and understood the concept. If not, please leave a comment and I'll explain it a bit more. Now, that's the first thing I do with the reverb, is putting everything into the same hall. Now, a lot of people do this next step differently, and I do it differently every time. The one thing I always do is the first application that I just explained, but these next steps, they vary from a project to project. So we're gonna send that to an auxiliary or a bus, and that's how we can control the overall sound of the full orchestra. So we're gonna send all these instruments, the violins, the cellos, the basses. Then we're gonna go to horns, the brass low, and we're gonna send them with varied levels, depending on where you want them in the hall. So that you're gonna use your ears for that. But I like to send all the orchestra to one auxiliary or one bus at the end. So all these different libraries now have that one unified tail of reverb. So it all sounds like everything now is in the same hall. So what I like to do is obviously do sends, and in this track I was using Valhalla. It varies really from project to project. I like Valhalla. You can take these settings if you want. I've recently been fiddling around with the Brascati reverbs. I obviously don't have the original unit, so I'm going through with the Slate Verb Suite Classic. They have it here, the BM7, and they sound really, really good. But I haven't used it in this track when I first wrote it, so is there. We're gonna experiment with different reverbs. So we're gonna do sends here. Let's. I want to play this part, and I'm gonna take off. Actually, no. I want to play the full section, and I'm gonna take off the full auxiliary. And the beauty of this, that you can now automate how much reverb you want at a certain time. So for example, in the beginning, it's very spacey, very spacious. What you can do is you can increase, and you can automate this. You can increase the reverb to make it even more dreamy. And then when it comes to the busier parts, like for example, when the whole orchestra comes in, now you can automate it and it goes down to the level that you like. So let's play around with it and see the different effects it can do just automating reverb. Right. There isn't much layers here, and they're already very spacey, kind of paddy sounds. So there isn't much reverb, you can tell. I'm not even sending that much to it. And they're very low in volume, so... But if I would send it to, like... Sorry about that. Here, let's send this one here. Alright, and send this guy a bit more. The drone guitars and pads. There isn't much here. Here. Alright, and let's increase that. You hear that? But because the sounds are already kind of washy-wash, I didn't send much of it. I didn't want it to sound like a piece of reverb pie. So it's going to stay back where it is. Alright, now here, we're going to come into the big part. You can reverb. At the impact, we can increase it a bit more and pull it back. Something like that. Now let's increase the reverb and see where we like it. Now it's sounding a bit washy. I don't like that. Nah. Now it sounds pretty good. I can't hear it, but I can feel it, and that's exactly what I want. So, rule number 2, you want to feel it, not hear it. I don't want to hear the reverb. I don't want to hear the tails. I don't want it to be distracting. I don't want to hear the in the reverb. So this sounds pretty good. So number 2, the auxiliary. You can send everything or sections to ascend. You can take it a step further if you want, but I like that because then I can... let me explain the step first. You can put a reverb on your buses and control that separately, but then it will be harder to automate. It will be a pain in the ass to automate your reverb on your buses, on your instrument buses. So you want to send that to an auxiliary and automate from there. I didn't explain what was after the reverb. Sorry. So I'm high passing everything below 90 hertz. All that garbage here, we don't want in a reverb. That's just going to sound like air building up, and we don't want that. So I'm clearing that, and again, giving room for the instruments that need that part. I don't want the bass drum to be hitting that reverb. That's going to take a lot of energy, and it's going to overpower the mix. You definitely don't want that. So send your reverb to a bus. I like to do that and control it from there. You can always put it back or push it where you can hear it, and then slightly pull it back where now you can't hear it, but you can feel it. All right. So hopefully that it kind of goes through applications of reverb and how to use it. I hear a lot of mixes where I feel like the instruments are disjointed. Something has lots of reverb and something is really upfront. You want to have a cohesive piece of music. You want it all to sound like they've been played together and not in different sessions or different projects and just been put together. That can be very distracting for the ears. So mixing rule number 1, reverb, use it gently. If you so when I want to explain why I use it very gently, because when you start writing music, let's say, all right, let me take that reverb off here. Okay, and the EQ. All right, so let's say you're writing some like an ostinato, like the Hans Zimmer shit. It's not really inspiring when it's like that dry and upfront. You don't feel like, oh, but that's not how it sounds. When when I was listening to the Dark Knight, so you want to have a bit of reverb there to get you inspired as well. When it's when it sounds good, when a sound is good, you truly get inspired, and that's how I like to do it. But don't overdo it, because let's increase that reverb here, all right? It might sound good now, but when you add everything and when that reverb builds up, it's not gonna sound good anymore. So, and you're gonna wonder, okay, but why can't I get that mix to sound right? I would rather you use a bit of reverb first and then add it on a bit by bit if you need it, rather than using a lot of it and then in a few instruments, all of a sudden now you get this muddy mix and you wonder why. It it's usually the reverb. People misuse reverb. They want to make their mixes sound big, but honestly, reverb is not the way to make your mixes sound big. Is layering the perfect instruments together that will make it sound big. Um, Having the right bass synth sounds in the bottom. So let's conclude this lesson. I hope I didn't, just blap and blap without, getting my thoughts clearly to you. I hope I did. It makes sense in my head. If it didn't for you, please let me know, and I will make another one explaining it further. But let me know where I fucked up, or if I didn't. Let me know as well. So today was reverb. The next one I'll be doing on EQing these instruments, and that is probably my main mixing technique that I use. I can stay away from reverb, but I can't stay away from EQing. So if I was on a mixing island and I needed just one plugin to use, it would be an EQ plugin. And that is it for today. Hopefully, you guys like it. Share it if you like it. If you did learn one thing or two, please smash that like button, just to let me know that I'm doing a good job. Have a good one, guys.